Hey traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz, Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, June 24th, and this is your end of day recap. So let's go through the indices first. A lot of chop in the S&P. I think the same thing in the Qs. However, there was definitely some things that were not chopping around today. So we'll go through those movers. There was definite, again, some momentum in some areas that, today would be classified as not a risk on today, another risk off day. And continuing to kind of see this throughout the session where, what's really helping the market is if there's an overnight move. But, even Thursday, if you remember, Friday was another chop fest. But Thursday was when we gapped open. And if you remember Thursday, which I was out of the office for half the day, but we almost went all the way back to flat in the S&P after starting the day up 1%. So what we're seeing for now is just kind of I think even though, and it's crazy because the S&P is very close to those 52-week highs, but we are seeing some profit taking, and I'll show you where I see that basically. But we are seeing some profit taking in equities, and we're seeing money be put to work in gold and bonds for now. So I'll go over that, and I don't think that is a crazy leap of faith at this point. Now, at this point, everybody's talking about gold, so it has gotten overbought. But I just wanted to, before I talk more about the movers for the day and where there is alpha, I just wanted to reference, this was from the Tribeca Trade Group newsletter. If you are not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, please check it out. Go to our website, sign up for a month, see if you like it. One of the things that I try to add is a little bit of perspective to the market, and also just a little bit of help in how you're trading. One of the things that so this was a couple weeks ago when we had a little bit more chop on the tape, but I went through just things that you can do. One of the things, of course, having patience, trade smaller, wait for confirmation, do not overtrade, do not trade just to trade, right? Wait for your pitch, wait for those really good setups. Be realistic with options, singles and doubles versus home runs, which is a big difference. I think right now what's also where I'm going to be kind of switching a little bit, and I talked about this in the member weekend newsletter that I put out yesterday, is just trading a little bit more stock than options. I just think it has gotten very difficult to trade options for swings. For scalping, it's fine, right? And I know a lot of people did pretty well on Friday, scalping and so forth. So there's always times to be using options, or there's going to be uses for using options. But if you're doing what I do on a daily basis, which is try to do more swing trading than day trading and scalping, it's a very difficult environment right now because you're getting a lot of names that are, I would say, not trending right now. And I can run through a list of names, but Nike was a good example. I think from Friday, that was a name that I was excited about, right? Just as an example. And don't worry, I'll go through more of today's movers. But the issue with Nike is that, and here's what the chart looked like. And I went over a really thought out example. Oh, that's a nasty looking candle, by the way. So Nike reports later in the week tried to go higher and failed. But so if you put on options, at the end of the day on Friday, or if you put them on this morning, you're going to have pretty a heavy loss when something like this happens. If you went into calls and the name reverses like this, if you went into stock, and again, as long as you're disciplined, right? You can get out of this and with a paper cut. With options, it's going to hurt because they're going to move against you very quickly, right? So I think right now, I think obviously all these are important, but for me, what I'm changing my strategy around a little bit is just to kind of get away from trading options that much. And I've had a number of examples where I was pointing out in the weekend newsletter that they're names that have really not lost that much, but because I went into an option trade rather than a stock trade, you're going to lose that premium every time. if the stock it doesn't, if the stock just chops, right? What I'm talking about is a choppy market. It's different when you have a trending market. Now we all love trending markets, right? But if it's a choppy market, you're going to lose the premium, right? It's just how it works in options. So that's why I'm slowly kind of moving over a little bit towards trading stock. Back to what I was doing in the beginning of the year that worked very well for me as well. And then you can also do things like sell premium in a choppy market. We actually were talking about that a little bit too, with some names that have a higher implied volatility with this. What could get us out of, for this week? So there's obviously this has changed. This was from the 616 newsletter, but we've got the G20 meeting at the end of the week. We've got Powell speaks again tomorrow, just going through events for the week. And of course, Russell rebalance. So that's what I want to talk about next, the Russell rebalance. A lot of people, when I say Russell, a lot of people associate small caps. Yes, that is where that's one of their big indices. But they also have a lot of growth and value indices. So Friday is Russell rebalance. That always happens at the end of the month. For June, it's a little bit different. Remember, on Friday we had quadruple witching. Which is for the S&P and for NASDAQ, but for the Russell, they do that once. It's an annual rebalance, and they do that at the end of June. So while S&P did this for the day, which is no big deal, just kind of a nothing day for most stocks, right? Considering that's what it did. Look at what IWM did today. So IWM, they were really, I would say, pedal down selling this. It did not have any bounce at all, almost a 45-degree angle down and to the right. So, like slight bounce here at 11:30, but it's rare when you see this, right? And everything else is not being really sold off. So this, I think, is just again, I'm very good with the reasoning. It's easy to explain some of these things after the fact. It is what it is. But I did talk about this a little bit earlier in the day that you could see some moves with the Russell rebalance. So there is what's known as a funding trade. Obviously they're shuffling all the members around this week, which will happen on the close of business. But there's also what's called the funding trade. So if by chance, if the formula says that they need to do more selling than buying, or more buying of some single names, then they may have to balance that out with selling the overall index. That's very common when they do the rebalance. Also, and if you're asking, well, why is he talking about the Russell rebalance today when that happens on Friday? Because all of the market makers as well as the brokers, keep in mind there's a portfolio desk at every broker that looks to kind of game this and give it to their portfolio traders to anticipate, right? It's all, basically what they do is they look at a big spreadsheet and they look at all the names that are coming out and going in and all the names that are being rebalanced up and down weights. And then they figure out based on the assets that are tracking IWM and some of the other small cap indices, how much actually, then they back into individual names and figure out how many shares have to be traded for the actual rebalance. And then if it's a huge amount, the next step is what they do is they anticipate based on the number of shares that have to be traded. Okay, well, what's the average daily volume of that stock? And if it's like 60 or 70%, or sometimes it's like 200% of the average daily volume of a stock, what they'll do is they'll pre-position, meaning they'll start doing it today. Sometimes they actually really try to game it and do it last week. So anyway, that's this. And if you look across different small cap names, some names really got beat up pretty hard today. Now there was some names that there's going to be some names to buy as well, but a lot of names really were sold off pretty hard today. So hopefully that's just kind of a one day or a couple day event. Let me draw into sector performance for the day, and you'll kind of see what I mean. This will kind of reveal itself as I bring it up. But I've been showing this spreadsheet a lot because it's been helping me. It's also, I think, it helps members as well just to see what they're buying throughout the day, right? We've talked about over and over that the majority of the moves are coming in the overnight. Not so much today, and again, it's not every single day, right? But it's seems like that's the trend right now, is that the overnight moves are much bigger for the equities than the intraday moves. So, in case in point, right? SPY, we didn't have much of a move. Again, this is the percentage change for the day. This is the percentage change since the open, right? So look at what IWM did. That sold off all throughout the day. Look at, on the other hand, bonds and gold. They both finished positive for the day. Bonds not too much of a, kind of a grinding move intraday. They finished up 75 basis points for the day. But look at gold. I mean, the money is still, and this was the case all last week, was that you would see this throughout the day, was that gold and gold miners. I mean, look at gold miners. They opened up essentially flat for the day. They were up about 30 or 40 basis points to start the day. And look at the trending day that they had today. And that was one of the only sectors that did this. But it just kind of tells you, people, for now, people don't want to be in stocks right now, or they're taking profits in stocks. Again, this is just one day. This could change tomorrow. But for the most part, this is what it was last week too. Keep in mind, we rallied most that Thursday. We gapped up, and a couple other days too. But what I'm looking for is trending days, trending during the day, not just in the after hours market. And these were the only sectors that really went up after the open. This is the majority of what happened today. Biotech, I would imagine. Trump announced that he's putting together some disclosures about drug pricing and signed that. I don't know, what did he sign? Did he sign a bill or something today? But this really killed. So again, this is another fake out move, right? Biotech was one of your best performing groups last week. And so I'm going to talk about losers and winners, but I put on, this was a setup from the weekend newsletter, and I still have this trade on. My stop is the 200-day moving average, which will be a little bit down, but I mean, this thing got shellacked today, down 2.9%. I'm still looking at, as long as it stays above value, this virgin point of control is active, but it's negating. So again, very, very choppy markets that we have, and very difficult to find a trend other than gold and bond equivalents, right? Consumer staples, utilities, those types of things are continuing to trend. Other things like this, you would think that the analysis would show coiled in here, a breakout of coiled, but we'll see on the retest. So it filled this little gap. We'll see what it does this week. Maybe overreacting a little bit. Also, some bad drug news out, I think, Bristol Myers wanted to sell one of Celgene's drugs, so that kind of catching fire too. Catching fire in a bad way, not a good way. So a couple of things going on in biotech today, but really disappointing. IBB, one thing I realized last week was that we took out an upside VPOC, and sometimes we do see this reversal. So we took this out last week. I'll wait for Thinkorswim to adjust, or maybe it doesn't. But we did. I mean, this is textbook. Basically taking out this virgin point of control and then reversal lower. Other sectors, so biotech is a portion of IWM. Also, all the oil names, which were super strong last week, saw some ETF inflows. Those backed off today, even though gold was okay today. Now, did I say gold? Oil was okay today. I think oil actually perked up at the end of the day. Finished up 63 basis points, and gold names got sold. XLE. Let's just see where this looks like. Kind of did get into value. Not that big of a deal. Maybe filling this gap, or trying to fill this gap after a nice performance last week. So that those were also the underperformers. REITs actually did bad today too. They were down. They were down 0.5% on the day, but I guess they must have started the day up and were sold off. Transports are another area besides the small caps that looked ugly today. And so let's look at the IYT. Getting a couple days into value and then coming right back out. So we'll see. I know what FedEx reports this week, so that's one of the top holdings of the transports index. But making, and I think at this point you could say it made a lower high as well. So after here and here, so respecting, you could probably draw a trend line in here at this point, and that's not the most bullish thing right now. So man, can it get any uglier? And what, it was just one day, kind of negating a whole bunch of things that were kind of perking up last week. And that's why I kind of spelled out, a little bit better practices right now until the dust settles. But so that's transports that looked ugly. And then you have a couple of other things. So the FANG stocks, they tried. I looked at a couple names today. I tell you, out of the FANG stocks, right, I've been pretty negative on the FANG stocks, talking about how they haven't been trending. Facebook, if Facebook can get just a little bit higher, if you go to this weekly chart, and I sent this out on Twitter this weekend, you do kind of have a cup and handle pattern forming. But again, weekly bar, so we've got 4 days ahead of us, and it's got to stay above 191.32. Pretty not bad looking cup and handle if it can maintain it, but that's a name that I'm definitely watching this week to see how it goes. Amazon was another thing too. Normally, if I didn't think that we had a bunch of chop today, I would have maybe tried this for a trade. But a move inside value midday, one big green bar, and I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, we've got the top of value here, so I'm not going to do anything. But just chop in Amazon. What else here? Yeah, not much notable at all in the FANG stocks today. Very, very tight range. Apple traded 2 basis points after the open. Amazon, Facebook, same thing. Google lower. Netflix, which is continues to be really a pain in the neck chart looking. But look at the software names get hit today. So going back to like what I was talking about in the beginning of the video with the Russell rebalance, right? Clearly, something is out play here because there wasn't a bunch of news. I think Shopify got downgraded, Splunk had an upgrade, but I mean these names got pounded today, which will happen, and we've talked about this over and over with this group. This group does get ahead of itself, and people will really kind of come in and take profits in this group. I do think what happened though today, a heavy contributor, is this rebalance, this Russell rebalance. Again, it's not just small caps; it's Russell growth, Russell value, and so forth and so on. So what happens is they oftentimes they have to sell the winners and buy the losers. It's very counter trend. If you're a trend trader, it's one of the things that I hate most about ETFs is that they're always doing this on the quarterly or annual rebalances. They're selling the winners and they're buying the losers to make it go back to their benchmark weights. But yeah, I mean, look at these names. Twilio down 4% since from the open. So good if you were shorting these names. I did not play in that arena today, but yeah, so that's what we've got. So let's talk about some of the option activity and some of the positives of the day, right? We'll get the negatives out of the way. Definitely, this looks pretty good. And if I'm going to say something negative about EA, now I day traded EA today. It worked out really nice. This is a really nice looking move. However, the only bad thing about this, so again, if you're in this trade and you want to ignore this is fine. But for me, and why I just day traded this name and made some money and skedaddled was because it's got to get above. Just trying to make jokes on kind of on a lackluster day today. 102, which is not that far up there, right? If you're looking for a bigger trend, so it's got to get into value for the year. EA. So otherwise, if I didn't see that right in front of me, I would have stayed in a trade because I think this setup looks really nice on the daily chart. Now you can forget about that 102. If you're in a longer term trend and if you just want to use your stops and so forth. But for me, I got to see it get a little bit higher. What you could do in this situation is have a small position, and then maybe if it gets above that 102. You could go into it further, but again, remember the last time, and I traded this. The last time I traded EA was when it did this thing, and I took it off right at that VPOC. So thank you, Virgin Point of Control, and it has not been able to get close to that. The other gamers actually, they're showing momentum. I think Stevens came out with a top pick for EA. That was the catalyst there. But Take Two has been moving pretty nicely since they reported earnings and kind of came in here. Activision saw a little bit of call activity too, maybe just because it was carrying the momentum. I don't know anything specific going on for ATVI, but that's also trying to. I mean, this is a pretty nice base if it manages to get above. Different looking picture on the weekly chart. It has some run. It has some room to run for ATVI. So big old base, sideways base there. So that's definitely one to watch. What else did I trade today? I mentioned I had a loser in XBI, a winner in EA. Also, hey, if you're looking for something like, cover up the symbol, because I know some traders, they don't want to play utilities. But look at this Dominion Energy get above this range. I spy a VPOC up there. Sorry, these are horrible jokes. 8360. I'm embarrassed for myself. 8360 is a Virgin point of control up there, and I did get long this name today. There was some in the money calls. That's perfect. If bonds are going to continue to rally, or stay at the level that they are, yield plays are going to continue to be in vogue right now, and who knows how long that lasts. If they don't get anything done in the G20, maybe you'll continue to see this. But just from a technical setup, I think to play this stock to around $84. And they bought in the money options there. You could see all the volume there in Dominion. So I took that trade. I did not take any targets or anything like that. But I started a position because this is how I've been doing it lately. Or kind of if I want to start a position midday when I see option activity, which is again 11:48, then I'll look at the name at the end of the day because again, there's better moves that are happening. Well, I shouldn't say that for the utilities and for gold miners. They're actually doing very well during the day. But sticking to my rules, waiting to see how it looks at the end of the day, and then adding to it. So I actually added to this at the end of the day. It was roughly at the same price. What else did we? A couple other things that I traded. Very quickly, there was another name that I traded, but I can't remember what it was. Option activity. I mean, there's LVS, that was it. There was an LVS call buyer. I mean, that was a quick scalp for me. Took that trade off very quickly. More speaking of gold. Oh, by the way, I was one of the first ones or the only one I think to tweet this out. I'm sure somebody else did, but GLD had the biggest one-day inflow on record, $1.6 billion on Friday. So up until then, I would say, because I do look at the ETF fund flows on a day-to-day basis, we really have not seen that much buying on the ETF side in GDX, right, in terms of fund flows. Now, we've seen option activity in GLD, GDX, and some single names. We saw more of it today in gold. Also, PVG is another name. There's been a couple other miners that we've seen. Newmont, I think we saw last week. But and that's option flow. In terms of ETF fund flows, there really hasn't been that much. Here, let's see if I still have this up from this morning. Here was the one-day record inflow for GLD. I'll just wait for Bloomberg to refresh here. Right, so that's what that looks like. So, the inflows are on the bottom of the screen. Notice we saw a bunch of inflows in here, and it actually came apart. So you don't want to be like on the tail end of the inflows. For GDX, right? Notice there's been nothing. There's been no inflows into this. So, this could still catch momentum so my plan, right? I did the thing last week where I chased for GDX, and it paid off for me, right? It was up 3.8%. I'm still holding some of that trade, but talking about chasing in the right thing, that really worked for me because I did not want to put that trade. I've been talking about GLD and GDX for weeks now. I just did not want to put that trade on prior to FOMC, which you could see a whole bunch of, complete 360 moves sometimes on FOMC. So this worked really well. I added this on Friday, and if we do happen to get some type of an inside day and let this thing cool, considering that money has not gone into it on the ETF side, there's going to be some money, I would think, at some point that's going to be put there. But Would I chase up here anymore? Probably not. I would wait for some type of a pullback in this group because, again, this is still a great looking breakout. It's just gotten a little bit ahead of itself in terms of RSI and so forth. So an inside day would be very welcomed at this point because this momentum I think could continue for a little bit, considering that these ETFs have not seen any inflows. Again, GLD has, IAU has, so the metal, the gold ETFs that track the metal itself, but not the stocks. All right, guys. So we'll end it here. That was a certainly long enough video for the day, but a lot to cover. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow in the trading room.